Hello, everybody, and welcome back to From BA to Broadway. You know who it is. It's me. It's Brennan Stefanik. And today I am joined by one of my favorite people on the planet. If you follow me on social media, you've seen her around. It is Miss Pauline Parkhurst. What's going on, Pauline?
I'm overjoyed.
Welcome
I'm
to
so
the
excited.
pod.
What a fun time we're about to
I'm
have.
so happy to have you here. Pauline, who are you? What the heck do you do?
Hi. I'm Pauline.
Yeah, you
she,
are.
her. I have a degree in musical theater from Western Illinois University. My parents met doing theater. It's been like in my blood forever. And I moved to New York City in 2020 in the middle of a pandemic, which was a very tumultuous time, obviously. And because there was no theater happening, I ended up exploring a lot of different options for jobs, which I think is pretty common. I got kind of into the corporate world and then eventually landed in real estate. So I got my license as an agent in 2022 and have been showing apartments in the city and, doing the thing ever since.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Pauline, how did we meet?
Oh, wow. What a story. Wow. The origin story.
Oh, my God.
We, Brennan, met working at Harry Potter New York,
Indeed.
the flagship store.
The flagship retail store.
Yeah, I was a manager for a department that no longer exists, although I don't know if you saw this news.
Oh, my God.
They added a new broomstick experience.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that's
Is
like
it
a green screen
there
thing.
right now?
Yeah, you know how I don't know. It's just so satisfying to talk tea about a place that you no longer
Oh, yeah. And
work
we'll tell
at.
all.
Well, listen, we had a great experience. I met my now roommates there.
I had some really great times, especially at the
Absolutely.
beginning. It was
Absolutely.
awesome.
Learned a lot about corporate life, learned a
Mhm.
lot about advocating for yourself as an
Mhm.
employee and getting out of the yes and mindset
Yep, for sure.
of being a performer and like into that whole different world. It was like a really eye-opening experience. So I'm very grateful for it. But that being said, tea is always good.
Oh,
tea is
for
always so
sure.
satisfying. So yeah, that's how we met. And obviously cut from the same cloth as
Yeah,
far
yeah,
as
yeah.
like performing and acting and what your priorities are and figuring out what you want to do and like navigating the city, which I think is really pertinent to what we're talking about today too.
What are we talking about today?
Well, a perfect blend of actor background and now the real hard skills that I've learned as a real estate agent. Today we're talking about moving to New York City.
Folks, this is the Move to New York episode. And you know what, folks? You don't have to move to New York. I'm sure a lot of you are considering other options, but this is for our New York girlies, and hopefully you're going to get a lot out of it anyways for wherever you are moving, respectively. So what was your moving story? You moved in 2020.
Oh, I almost
Pauline,
feel bad. Like,
it's-
I get like,
because it was so cushy.
it was so cushy. And I just like really want to recognize the privilege that I had is not the norm for anyone else that I've ever met. And that's not to say I haven't had my share of like struggling to pay rent now as a person and being here for years and just doing what we do. But when I first moved here, I was living with my cousin who is a Harvard graduate lawyer, full ride scholarship,
Wild.
like was on the Obama administration, an
Wow.
absolute like hurricane of a woman in the best way possible. She is incredible. And her husband, who worked for the British government and who was a British man. And we had a deal. I've lived with them previously when they lived in London.
Okay.
When I studied abroad there, I lived with them. So they have always been such a great resource for me. And like I was comfortable living in their home and knew their two young kids really well and was accustomed to taking care of them when they were like toddlers in London. And so they moved to New York for her job and had a Brooklyn brownstone they were renting that his work paid for.
Amazing.
That had an extra room, and we had a deal. I basically was their live-in au pair. So I took care of the kids and lived rent-free, and they like paid for my food. And obviously like it didn't leave a ton of time to do auditioning or stuff like that. But it was also fall of 2020. And it was like, what was even going on anyway? But like, you know, I got into TikTok and like performing there and became somewhat of a creator for a while. And, you know, actually, ironically, was a researcher for a podcast and like doing remote work. And so, yeah, that was my introduction to the city. And it was just incredibly eye-opening because the community that I was surrounded with were really, really wealthy people and people who were raising their kids outside of the craziness of Manhattan, which is where I wanted to be.
For sure.
At least for work, if not for life, for like, you know, living situation. But that being said, like it was such a great opportunity in 2020 when most people were moving out of the city. It was such an interesting way to get to know the city, which you never stop doing really as a person living here. But it was great. I mean, I went to MoMA for the first time and I was in a room with Starry Night by myself. There was nobody else there.
That's crazy.
I went recently again and it's like shoulder to shoulder. Absolute
of course,
insanity. So yes, my situation in moving to New York was very unique. I had a place to land, which not a lot of people do. No. And I had the freedom to explore neighborhoods and like without paying rent and getting to know the city that way before I had to really focus on surviving here.
Yes.
So I was extraordinarily privileged in that way. But I don't actually know your story. Wow. Tell me your moving to New York
I'm
story.
sure it's been mentioned at one point in time, but like I also don't know if I've told the story on the podcast. I might not have. So I moved to New York in January of 2021.
Okay.
It was a very quick move. I am a very anxious person, but I was like out of my mind, like terrified when it was happening. Because when you are moving here and you're signing a lease, it's usually happening in the span of like a day.
Yeah.
You know, like it's very much, oh, you looked at this place, now you got to commit to living in it.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. We can talk about that. But the entire business is run on urgency and momentum.
For sure.
Yeah.
So this was January of 2021. It was still a ghost town here in New York City. But because of that, there were some lovely, lovely prices happening.
Heck yeah.
And so me and 3 of my best friends from college moved together. We found a 4-bedroom, 1.5 bath in Gramercy Park.
Whoa.
For $2,800.
No.
We were all paying $700 a piece.
That is stupid.
Gramercy Park. Like, way too good to be true.
That's stupid good.
For sure. But the thing is, it was too good to be true.
Oh, no.
Because what they didn't put on the listing, for some weird reason, is that the place was infested with mice. And I mean infested. Like, in the walls, everywhere. By the time we eventually called 311, folks, 311 is what you call when you need to tell and tattle on your landlord.
311 can be your best friend.
For sure.
311 will make stuff happen.
Exactly.
Just the threat of 311 can make stuff happen. That's like such a good thing to have in your back pocket.
Exactly. And when we called them, they were like, have you seen 4 mice since you moved in? And we were like, we saw 4 mice today.
No.
Like today. And it was so terrible. It's a shame because it was a nice apartment, but it was so terrible. Like they were literally like in the walls. I could hear them behind my bed every night. I had to start sleeping with earplugs.
Nightmares.
The one time I saw one in my room was the most scary thing ever. It like had come from the kitchen and I just saw I was like gaming with my friends that night and I just saw a shadow like go across the floor and I was like, no.
See,
not my safe space.
I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in like Peoria, Illinois, cornfields, like the woods were in my backyard. We saw mice in my home growing up, so it's not foreign to me, but there is something about New York mice or New York rats.
Yeah.
It is, please, everyone listening right now, please knock on any wood around you. I have never seen a mouse or a rat inside any apartment that I've shown.
Amazing.
That's not to say they weren't there.
Yes.
I have never seen them.
For sure.
And I hope that is always true. I've seen rats in the backyard spaces of places all over, but never inside.
100%.
Oh, cockroaches is a different story.
Yeah, they're everywhere. That's inevitable. But so all of my friends already had jobs in the city. I was still rocking pandemic unemployment. And so about 2 months in, like literally only 2 months, the land people who were absolute monster devil people were like, we don't want to send exterminators anymore. And we were like, we just don't want to.
That's illegal.
We just don't want to live with vermin. Like you have to legally keep sending exterminators. We know that, but like we were like, we just don't want to live with vermin. And the thing was, we were on the first floor. The building was structurally infested. It would cost them an incredible amount of money to actually get rid of the problem altogether.
Of course.
And they were like, well, if you don't like it, you can just leave. And we were like, oh, actually, if you're fine with that, we're fine with that because we don't want to deal with you at all. You're terrible people. And this is just not a good arrangement. So all my friends already had jobs, so they needed to relocate immediately. I did not. So I said, you know what? I am going to do my due diligence and I'm gonna go back to Massachusetts for however long, find a good place and really vet it out. And I found this place that we are currently sitting in right now. It's a lovely 2-bedroom in Hell's Kitchen, which is my dream neighborhood. I had like one understanding of what New York is. I had a friend that I would stay with every time I came here, but that was like my idea of what New York is. I was like, oh, wow. And she lives in Hell's Kitchen in this apartment that is very similar to this one that I'm sitting in. And I found this place. I took a day trip up to look at a couple places. And I had found this like the night before, and I was like, there were like 3 different agents like listed on it. And I was like, I was calling them, I was texting them. I was like, someone needs to show me this place. Someone needs to. And I showed up and I can see my friend's front door from my front door. I'm like, okay, so like, this is my New York. This is exactly what I pictured about living here and moving here. This is everything I want and more. And needless to say, I have been here ever since. I once again got a good COVID deal on that. It has become since not so good. It is, they raised it back up to market value, but I love this place too much to leave it. They will have to pry it out of my cold, dead,
I do. I love
very
this
poor hands, you know?
I show a lot of apartments. I show a lot of 2-bedroom apartments. I show a lot of Hell's Kitchen apartments. This one is top tier.
Thank you.
It's
I appreciate
very nice.
that.
Yeah.
She's very cozy. She's very nice. She's very
but it's like breathable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the ceilings are very high, which makes the biggest difference in the world. And so now I've been here. I love this place. I'm happy. Never seen a mouse here. Once again, knock on wood.
Everyone, wherever you are.
Yeah. I have, of course, seen a cockroach once or twice, which has been terrifying, especially when they are in this bedroom.
Yeah, which is like not necessarily something you think about when you think about my New York. Not what you think about when you think about that experience. But it's truly like, if anyone is appalled, like I might have been once, of like, why would you ever choose that? Yeah. You know? Which is like where the downsides, and I'm sure a lot of cons may come up in this conversation because there are a lot of cons, I think, to moving to New York, which like I think it's important to understand before you move here. Totally. That, you know, it's not Sex in the City, New York, and it's not like Gossip Girl, New York. Like whatever idea that you have to understand that this is also like a real place, and we're on a really small island with a lot of people and a lot of restaurants and a lot of vermin. Yeah,
if you want realistic New York in TV, Broad City.
My brother has been absolutely on my back trying to get me to watch Broad City.
Broad City.
I've seen the first 2 episodes for his sake, but I haven't watched any more.
It's so good. It's so good. But I'm like, that's realistic New York. If anything, it's a little bit under realistic, so you have good expectations.
There you go.
You will be pleasantly surprised when you get here.
But like, I think something that I wish all my clients would understand, and something that I have to communicate often, is that no matter where you're looking, no matter how perfect you think an apartment is, or whatever your must-haves or your wish list for an apartment, whatever that might be, there's always going to be a downside to every single apartment. Unless you're a billionaire, and even then, there are always downsides. Like, it'll be gorgeous, but it'll be 4 stories up. Yeah. You'll have tons of space, but no natural light. Exactly. You'll have an amazing kitchen, but no laundry and building. Yes. There's always going to be one thing that you're not going to get off your wish list. And I think it's just important to like have that expectation set. Oh, totally. And also to recognize that like you can keep looking forever for the perfect apartment, but because there are so many options and so many neighborhoods and so many, like, there's so many apartments
For sure.
in Manhattan and in the surrounding boroughs. You can make any place work. As long as it has like the 2 or 3 things that you must have.
Yes.
You can make any, scour IKEA, scour Pinterest. There's a solution to nearly every problem you can think of. You can make it work.
Oh,
part of
my
it
God.
is
Yeah.
such a huge part of it too, is just literally the vibe check.
Oh, 100%.
It's like we were talking about previously, like with auditions.
Yeah.
Half of the fight of an audition is just passing the vibe check.
Yeah,
and I think the same
right.
thing is true for apartments.
Yep.
Of like, you just have to walk in and know in your gut, yeah, I could live here.
Yes.
Half the battle.
And also, folks, trust your gut. If you get that ick, then don't do it.
Yes.
You know, just
absolutely,
don't.
Yeah.
Always trust. I honestly, I wish I had trusted my gut when I moved here at that place. You know, I was very trepidatious for reasons that I couldn't articulate immediately. And then it ended up being exactly what I had felt it was going to be in my heart of hearts, unfortunately. So, yeah, I mean, once again, that's a lesson I had to learn. You know, I was 22. I think I was 22 at the time, or 23. Ooh, interesting. What year is it now? 2024?
It's 2024.
Okay, and that was 2021, which was 3 years ago. So I guess I was 23.
Okay.
At the time. Anywho, yeah, so like it's something that you got to learn. Once again, it's just like something that comes with age and living and life, is that like shit happens. Yeah, and it's going to happen everywhere and anywhere, and you got to figure out how to be happy and craft your life around the shit, you know?
Yeah. And that being said, like, talking about the cons and that, you know, no place is perfect. That being said, New York or nowhere, baby.
Oh, like, my God, the greatest city in the world.
Unbelievable. The things, like, even if your apartment is tiny and doesn't get light, if you walk out of your apartment, you get, like, world's best bagel is two steps away. You hop on the subway and you can look at Times Square, or, you know, like, I walked past Bryant Park today, like in between work things, and it's just, you look up every once in a while, or at least I do, because I'm this type of person.
Oh yeah.
Where I just stop and look up at the sun blindingly reflecting off of the freaking Empire State Building, and I'm like, New York or nowhere, baby.
Literally.
Like, this is why we deal with cockroaches. This is why we deal with 5 or 6 story walk-ups, and why we pay ridiculous amounts of electricity so that we can pump air conditioning into our very hot apartments. This is why.
Yeah, folks, if there is a consistent white noise in the background of this episode, I refuse to turn off the air conditioner and the fans right now, because it is probably like, I don't know, 110 degrees outside right now. So.
I don't know if your listeners will be grateful, but I want you to know I am so grateful for that choice.
Yeah. I'm hoping the editing software will get rid of it, and we'll see, but time will tell. Anywho, let's dive into it even more than we already have.
I know.
So, New York, you're moving here. Bunch of places you can live. In fact, there are 5 boroughs, as you may frequently hear. Hit me with them.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know I was getting quizzed.
Oh my God. I mean, we can talk about it, but I just figured that would be an easy...
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. Well, let's go through. Obviously, Manhattan.
That is, I feel like when you think of New York, that is what you are thinking of. This is the skyscrapers. This is Central Park. This is all of that kind of stuff is Manhattan.
The island. We have Brooklyn.
I would say that's the second most frequently talked about.
I think so.
And I had no concept of what it was prior to moving here.
Before I moved here, I met people who lived in New York or lived in Manhattan, and they said that they had never been to Brooklyn before. And I was like, what are you doing?
I rarely go to Brooklyn, if I'm being honest.
I understand. I think about this often because I studied abroad. I've always had like such a huge piece of my heart wanting to travel the world. And I worked as a performer on a cruise ship for like 2 years. And so I worried in moving to New York that I would feel the itch to leave.
Heard.
I've never felt that here.
No.
Or at least it took a lot longer for me than it normally does, because if I want to change my perspective and change my environment, I take a subway to Brooklyn.
Truly.
Like, it's so and the same can be said for any of the boroughs, but
for sure.
Like, it's just a totally different like cultural vibe.
And like there are so many neighborhoods in Brooklyn that feel drastically different.
Mm-hmm.
Like I truly, every time I go to a different place in Brooklyn, I'm like, this isn't even the same state.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like this.
Mm-hmm.
What are we talking about here? But there is like so many different environments there. There are a lot. I mean, a lot of people really love Brooklyn. You know, and that's awesome. And there's a lot of options to find there. You know,
when I first moved, I lived in Park Slope,
mm-hmm.
which is considered to be like quite a wealthy neighborhood. There's
Mm-hmm.
like celebrities that live in Park Slope.
Yeah.
It's where a lot of people who have a lot of money raise their children. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of like family vibes and park vibes and dog vibes. But I think it's one of the joys of being a New Yorker is just getting to know those neighborhoods well.
Totally.
Brooklyn in general, I would say, is of two, like, at least from my experience, has like two main groups of people. It's Park Slope,
mm-hmm.
Cobble Hill, like anywhere around Prospect Park.
Mm-hmm.
That's like very well-to-do, affluent people raising kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like hipster Brooklyn. There's Greenpoint, which those apartments, which I show occasionally,
mm-hmm.
are just as expensive as Manhattan.
I do.
Williamsburg, Greenpoint, really good thrifting,
mm-hmm.
like really good restaurants. That's like where you get further into Brooklyn, and it's like, you get like really good, crazy loft style apartments.
Like
and,
Bushwick,
yes,
like
mm-hmm.
Flatbush, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
That's where the hipsters thrive too.
It's
you know?
true. Yeah.
Granted, I have my hipster tendencies for sure.
Oh, yeah.
But that is where the true hipsters, the truest of the true, find their flock.
We should go thrifting.
Oh my God, yeah,
Brooklyn
absolutely.
is my favorite. It's my Greenpoint specifically is my favorite.
What's
place
that place
thrift.
in Greenpoint? Right off
there's a Beacon's Closet that's
Okay,
huge that I love to go to. There's a Buffalo Exchange.
Mm-hmm.
There's a place called Monk Vintage that's pretty good. And then if you're like planning an itinerary, I usually treat myself to Peter Pan Donuts, which is right over there. If you're a Marvel fan, that's where MJ worked at the end of one of the movies.
Don't make me remember that.
I know, but it's cash only. Just,
yeah.
Just a heads up. But the best
people don't
donuts.
carry around cash these days.
I know they don't.
I always have cash.
Do you really?
Always.
I didn't know that about you.
That has always been like a part of my being is just having cash because like I don't know. Granted, like my dad is also a very anxious person, so he's always like, "Oh, you gotta have cash."
He's not wrong.
No,
he's not wrong.
Yeah, but like also the thing is now that I'm thinking about it, they're also like scared of technology a lot of times too. So it very much feels like you need to have cash in case there's an emergency and cards.
In my mind, like yes, but in my mind, it's you need to have cash for the hole in the wall cash only food places.
And now
that's the only reason I would ever carry around cash.
Now that's what I use it for the most, you know? Or when like my bank account, I'm like, oh my God, I can't spend more money this week.
It feels like Monopoly money.
I have cash.
It doesn't count.
That's not going to reflect in the numbers that I'm looking at and stressing about.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm always a person to carry on cash and nobody has it these days.
Yeah, nobody really does.
I don't know.
But Peter Pan Donuts. Cash only.
There you go.
Yeah. So anyway, that's Brooklyn.
Yes.
At least my small slice of it.
For sure.
Of my experience. And then we have Queens.
Of course.
Which is where I live.
It sure is.
In Astoria, which is such a great neighborhood.
It's so great.
I feel like I light up every time I talk about Astoria. And to your point from before, Astoria was absolutely not my idea of my New York. I had stayed in Brooklyn previously, and I had stayed in like Washington Heights, Manhattan.
Yep.
But it's just like the more that I've gotten to know Astoria, I just love it. And I also think as someone not from New York, someone from the Midwest who like values peace and quiet, for example, it's just nice being a little bit removed. And I could say the same thing about Brooklyn.
Yeah.
It is nice. There's a value, both monetary and like vibe-wise, to being a little removed from Manhattan.
Of course.
Obviously, it's a little less convenient if you're coming into the city for auditions and stuff, like, you know, figure out your train route and figure out all of that stuff. But you get a lot more bang for your buck.
For sure.
Generally, especially in Queens. And it's becoming more gentrified. They were going to build a Target. And then I don't know if I've told you this, but the project was nixed. So they're not building a Target as far as I know. But, you know, there's definitely getting more like, you know, chain restaurants and stuff like that is coming, but I feel like the heart of it is still
For sure.
yeah.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Queens is great. Queens
Yeah.
is so good.
I mean, I feel like nowadays the people that I know are mostly moving to Astoria. Honestly, like Astoria specifically. Like,
Yeah.
Excuse me, this is a pro burp podcast. If you feel it coming on,
Oh, good to know.
you let it go. I'm sad I didn't do it into the mic though. That was a little
I
disrespectful of me.
know.
Sorry.
I know.
I felt the need to be a lady there. I don't know why. Yeah, I feel like so many people are going there. It is also like I don't know. Once again, not what I thought of when I thought of New York, but if I had to live anywhere else that was not where I currently live, I would probably flock to Astoria. Like,
it is incredible.
It's
Incredible
lovely.
food, incredible community. It's you feel so safe. You feel so like I walking to the subway this morning, there were like 5 people from my front door to the subway that I was like, oh hey, oh I'm headed to work, oh how you doing? It's just that sort of vibe, and that's something that I really value
for sure.
But also it's so much cheaper
than
half the apartments I show.
But of course,
that are cockroach infested and gross and huge 5-6 floors up. Where I am is great.
Totally.
So yeah, I think if you're someone who isn't familiar with New York, or maybe has only visited as a tourist and visited in Manhattan, tourists don't generally come to Astoria, and tourists don't generally go to like Park Slope or other Brooklyn places or whatever. I feel like it's worth it to take some time, even if you already have a living situation. When you first move, it is worth it to invest time and explore.
Yeah, because
I think you find neighborhoods that are compatible with what you want.
Totally.
And it's like to each their own.
Yeah.
And now as someone who has had the benefit of getting to know these neighborhoods quite intimately and the buildings that make them up, like there's something good about, I feel like it's like choosing a favorite sibling kind of.
Oh my God, yeah, of course. And you always have one.
I mean, yeah, obviously.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, for sure. You find your way, you find your place. Because once again, there is just so much here that you didn't know was here.
Yeah.
And
then what do we got? The Bronx?
We got the Bronx.
Which I took a really cool architecture tour. My parents came to visit, and it's something that they wanted to do. So I was like, all right, like we'll do this for the parents. But I think the best time out of everyone was so I felt like I got to know the city so much better from an outside perspective. It was a boat tour, which like if you're looking for something to bring your parents to, or like you're looking, highly recommend an architectural boat tour. Okay. So I learned on this boat tour that the Bronx is the only borough, or really, oh gosh, I have this fact and now I don't know if I'm going to get it right. But basically, it's one of the only places on the map that has "the" in front of it. And it's because there were 2 main brothers that like made the Bronx happen, or were I don't know, they formed that neighborhood.
Yeah.
And their last name was Bronx. So when people would say I'm going to the Bronx, they meant the Bronx, like the 2 brothers Bronx.
K''S.
Yes.
Wild.
And then it eventually, through common vernacular, just got shortened, and now it's the Bronx.
Incredible. That's so cool.
Fun fact.
Yeah. Wild.
I'm pretty proud of that one. I've never been to the Bronx. I went to, I'm so sorry, I'm not a sports person.
No, that's so fine.
But I went to a Yankees game.
Yeah, I would say that is very lower Bronx. Like, that doesn't feel like the Bronx. The Bronx to me.
But, I was just going to say, my roommate Ryan
is from,
also a dear friend, is from the Bronx.
Of course.
So he's given me a Google Earth tour of his hometown. It wild.
For sure. I would say that the Bronx has the reputation of probably being the most dangerous of the boroughs.
Yeah.
I feel like that is very common. And I feel like statistically it may be true. The thing is, folks, there's going to be danger and crime everywhere. There are millions of people in the city. So naturally, those things are going to happen. And so I feel like when I was moving here, my parents were like so concerned about like the dangerous areas. And like, I tried to be cognizant of that.
Mine too.
When finding places, but also like once I'm here, like I have my Citizens app, like things are happening everywhere.
Yeah, I meet a lot of clients, and sometimes clients will come with their parents.
Mm-hmm.
First time moving to New York City, just out of school, is like a really a type of client that I work with a lot. And I know from my own experience that my parents were also very concerned about this. But once I settled into my apartment and once they came to visit me and saw my walk from my apartment door to the subway, like they have such more peace of mind because they know,
For sure.
you know, and obviously, like, again, the community of my neighborhood now is so strong, and I'm so well connected to a lot of people that I know I'm never very far away from somebody that knows me,
Of course,
or somebody that could help me in a situation like that. But you know, I also do go out in Manhattan at night, and I work sometimes and show at like 7:30, and I'm getting on the train late at night. You just have to work your muscle of awareness, and that comes with time.
For sure.
So it's not necessarily an easy thing to explain to your parents when you're moving to New York, but it's just like you really do, after time, you get this awareness of just like this radar that's always a little bit up, and you just have to be smart.
100%.
You just have to be smart. I highly recommend using the Find My Friends feature. I share my location with my roommates. I share it with you.
That's my favorite game on my phone, is Find My Friends, just to see where all my little Sims are at.
I know. Well, it's true. And I also, listen, to each their own, like, set the boundaries that you need with the people you love.
Of course.
I also share my location with my parents.
Heard.
And they know that, you know, if they see my location in a ditch in the Bronx, like, there's not a lot they can do from Peoria, Illinois. But just knowing that it's there and they can check on me, it gives them a peace of mind that I think is valuable.
I don't share my location with my parents.
I know. I have a very, like...
It's not even like I don't want you to know where I am. It's that I know them having the ability to see that will cause them more anxiety.
And that's fair.
You know,
that's fair.
Like, I know that although they would probably appreciate it, they would be even more stressed. So I'm just like, they know who has my location.
There you go.
You know,
there
like, they know if I haven't called them or whatever, that they can text Pauline and be like, hey,
yes,
where is Brennan?
Yes.
You know, so they have the option. But I mean, you learn how to be safe. You have to. It's survival. It is part of survival here. But like, that does sound daunting and scary, but it does become so second nature. Like, it is just a part of you. It is something that you have in your body, this radar. So
and it is also the city that never sleeps. Like, there's always people,
for sure,
and there's safety in numbers. There's safety in that public nature of it,
of
too.
Course.
So,
and like, I mean, girlies, get your pepper spray, get your taser.
Yeah.
I love my taser. I've never had to use it, but I feel so powerful.
I've never been more scared in my life than when Tony Ann showed me how she uses
my God.
her taser. I mean, it's fun.
Find your ways to make yourself feel safe, but at the end of the day, it will start to become more natural for you.
All right.
But yeah, so the Bronx, definitely one of the lesser safe, but cheap places.
Yeah.
Cheap rent, you know.
I would say most people moving to New York are looking Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens.
Yes. I would say those are the three most popular in the communities that I have known, you know. I feel like the people that I know that live in the Bronx are born and raised there and stuff, you know, like very much they grew, they were hardened there, you know, that's where they learned everything. So that's more natural for them. But yeah, I would say Manhattan, Queens, Brooklyn. And then the last one, number 5. You don't know it?
I don't know.
Staten Island.
Oh, well, that's why.
Exactly. Yeah, folks.
I don't care.
Staten Island, it's there. You know, it's there. It's Italian. It's
I've never been.
It's a ferry ride away, or there's a bridge to Brooklyn, I believe.
Couldn't tell you.
Exactly. I've never been to Staten Island. I have taken the Staten Island ferry.
I choose to keep a dark cloud over my knowledge of
Understood.
Staten Island.
From what I hear, it's fun, you know, for sure. But it is, I would say, inconvenient. It is inconvenient because you do have to take a ferry to get there from Manhattan. And I really believe that there's only the bridge from Brooklyn. I don't think there is one to Manhattan.
One way in, one way out.
Exactly.
I don't think anyone looking to move to New York is like, I want to live in Staten Island.
Yeah. It feels very much like, once again, like the people that I know that live there were born there or whatever and kind of do that kind of thing. But I will say, Staten Island Ferry, great way to see the Statue of Liberty without paying for the whole shebang.
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
that stuff, because that was a lot when I did that for the first time.
Yeah.
So yeah, just hop on the ferry, go one way, and then come back, and there you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say in terms of moving, we're looking towards those three that we previously.
And then like within Brooklyn, kind of, because Brooklyn's pretty big. Queens, less or so.
For sure.
But Manhattan especially, within the borough, there's like 12 different boroughs. 100%. You know what I mean? There's each neighborhood is very distinct.
Yes.
And tends to be magnets for different types of people, very 100%, generally speaking.
100%.
As a licensed real estate broker, I am legally not allowed to speak to the demographic of any neighborhood.
Of course.
Or any space. And obviously, like, these are living, breathing ecosystems. Yeah. But
so you just hold up a sign and then I will say it out loud. No.
No.
Pauline's texting me right now.
Stop. I'm not, I promise. But
oh my God, I'm not saying that. Shame on you.
But that being said, I feel like as a performer and just as who I am as a person, you grow to be really observant about the neighborhoods, and it's like getting to know people. The more time you spend with each neighborhood, like the more kind of not stereotype, but kind of stereotype becomes more clear.
For sure. Like, I don't know, certain areas are home to certain demographics for certain reasons. You know, that is their community, that is their culture.
Yes.
And there are some that I feel like I don't belong in. Like, rightfully so. Like, I don't want to take up space in that place because that is just not what my life looks like, you know? And I don't want to appropriate anything, and I don't want to...
Of course.
I don't want to insert myself into somewhere that I don't feel like I belong.
Of course. But some of the things that bond these people are like genre of job.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
For sure.
Like, if you want to talk stereotypically about, like, the finance bro, like, there's definitely certain pockets of Manhattan where people like that will live and work and just, like, be in that community.
For sure.
Yeah.
I would say, generally speaking, in terms of, like, affordability, like, it almost, I will say, it's not a real true gradient, but I feel like the lower you are in Manhattan, the more expensive, and then the higher you go, it gets less expensive. However, with the caveat of being anything around Central Park will probably be a little bit more expensive.
Yeah.
Upper East Side, less so than Upper West Side.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's kind of the gradient of cost, you know?
I do think, in my experience, the more downtown you go, the less bang for your buck you're going to get as far as apartments. The buildings will be older. The apartments will be smaller. It's more condensed.
Yeah.
You're looking at, like, carpeted, rickety stairs going up, not like marble stairs going up like this building or like my building. But it is a really desirable area.
Totally.
8th Street downtown is a really, like, people go to NYU.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a lot of students starting school or
East
just
Village,
graduating
I would
school.
say, is very NYU centered, and Alphabet City down there is where all of the
incredible
NYU
history.
Of course.
Like, heart of Bohemia.
Rent, ever heard of it?
Ever heard her? Hello? Love you,
Alphabet
Bohem.
City, ABC, baby.
But yeah, I also find it interesting in spending time in these neighborhoods. I met a tenant once who lived in a building in the East Village who had in a rent-stabilized apartment, who had lived there for like 40 plus years. And I just remember asking him, like, how incredible it must have been to stand still in this one place and see every different version that this neighborhood must have gone through in the past like 40 years. Because Alphabet City in the time of Rent in the 90s was like, stay away. Like,
for sure.
Heroin needles everywhere. And now it's like hipstery. And
100%.
now, like, you can do thrifting. And there's like...
It's where everyone loves to thrift.
Yeah. And there's like a really big student population. And so that also comes with like bars that stay open really late and pizza and, like, you know.
There's a very prominent nightlife down there.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, it's
for
huge.
Sure.
Yeah. If we're ever over there, by the way, just like throwing out random recommendations, there is one of the best Indian restaurants I've ever been to.
Interesting.
It's called Milan, Milon.
Milan's not in India.
Milon.
Oh. O-N.
But anyway, it's incredible. It's really fairly priced. It's tiny. It's
Love
like
that.
the whole restaurant's like the size of a school bus.
Mhm.
And there's 4 different like levels you can choose like
Yeah.
up. And it's an incredible night out.
Rock and roll.
Highly recommend if you're in Alphabet City.
Okay.
But yeah, and then honestly, most of what I show for work in my company, their inventory is really concentrated on the Upper East Side. So I've spent a lot of time there, which is wildly different.
Mm-hmm.
Buildings are newer, I would say. This, again, not really speaking to the demographic of any certain place, but in my mind, personally, I think of Upper East Side as new New York money.
It's feeling like it's getting newer.
Mhm.
I also see a lot of people moving there.
Yes. And I think of the Upper West Side as old New York money.
Yeah.
The buildings are older, but older, not like rickety stairs, older as in like the coolest wood panel elevator that you've ever seen. And, like old as in like crown molding that's been there forever. That's like really cool.
Upper East is the Russell family and Upper West are the Van Ryn.
Look at that. It all comes back to the business.
The Gilded Age.
Oh, we do love the Gilded Age. We do love it.
Yeah, for sure. That feels exactly right. And like I also really enjoy the Upper East Side. Like it's very nice.
And of course, the closer you are to Central Park,
yes,
the more expensive and like crazy doorman.
Oh, and
building.
You can feel it.
You can.
Like, I feel like over there, it feels like every block is like the Tipton, you know? It feels like that exterior shot.
It totally does. You're right.
Yeah. And that's also like where the Met is and all of that jazz. So like naturally things will get more expensive the closer center you get.
And then if you're looking into Midtown, which is what I think of as just below Central Park.
Yeah.
Which is 59th.
I would say, Midtown is 59th between 59th and 38th. I would say feels like Midtown.
Yeah.
And everything between 38th and like 23rd feels vague.
I mean, there's nuance. There's nuance in there.
I feel like there's so many different places
and
there.
some people are really specific when they're looking at apartments. They're like, I want an apartment in Tudor City. And you're like, what the hell? Like you gotta cast your net a little wider. But actually, what I find is a really great resource. If you Google, the New York Times came out with if you Google very detailed neighborhood map. I use this for my job like literally every week.
Amazing.
They came out with an interactive map of Manhattan.
Gotcha.
And as you hover over whatever point you are geographically, it will give you a breakdown of the percentage of people that call it
Interesting.
Murray Hill, the percentage of people that call this specific spot Upper East Side or Lenox Hill or Turtle Bay or, Murray Hill.
And everyone's very protective of their status, like especially in our Hell's Kitchen Neighbors Facebook group and stuff. Like you have to write where you are located. And there's always discourse because there's people that are like at the bottom of Columbus Circle, which I'm like, I would just say I live in Columbus Circle. And they're like, we live in Hell's Kitchen. And we're like, no, you don't.
Yeah, I mean,
stop claiming our neighborhood.
Same thing. Like people get really territorial, but it's such this idea of perception about where you are. And like, I get that if you want to live in a specific place, you want to live in a specific place.
Of course.
But it's like there are no firm boundaries.
No.
And that's why I love that map, because it's like there is a huge percentage of people that don't call it this.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
this is like one specific spot. So yeah, I guess just like know that, those lines are blurry.
Of course.
I feel like we've covered Manhattan pretty well.
I think
Washington Heights is a big
Washington
place, especially
Heights,
for performers. I feel like I know a lot of actors that live in Washington Heights because they want to live in Manhattan,
Totally.
but they don't want to pay for living in Manhattan.
And honestly, like the commute-wise isn't terrible.
No. You take the A or the C. Express.
I was going to say you need the express train. Yeah. Otherwise, you're training for an hour. And I'm like, that's not.
The express
that's not
goes
why
from
I moved here.
what, like 59th to 130? I don't know. I don't know if the subways on that side as well as the Upper East Side. But yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of options everywhere, a lot of places to find. And that's kind of the geographics of it all. And then, I mean, when you are first moving here, there's also options that are impermanent. Like you don't have to come here and be living on a lease that you signed, at all. Like it's also a good option to like get to know places. Like you can sublet, first of all.
Yeah.
Subletting happens all the time. Very frequently it is under the table because a lot of landlords don't permit that per se, but like nobody knows anything. So like a lot of times your friends are going to be posting and being like, hey, I'm looking for a sublet. Or, I mean, the bigger the theater community you have, the more people you will see posting their friends' stories of, hey, looking to sublet my room for a month while I'm on this contract or whatnot, you
Absolutely.
know? So I know a lot of people that like their only living in New York is like hopping from sublet to sublet, you know, just because they haven't had to be here for a consistent period of time because they are also booking every once in a while and it's flexible and they have that option. So like really, really awesome option. Usually you will be going into someone's furnished room, like it is their stuff still. So you'll just bring your suitcases with your clothes and essentials and whatnot.
It's honestly like a couple pieces of advice for the sublet option. After my very cushy experience in moving here, I was on a sublet for originally it was a sublet for 6 months and then I extended. And I felt like the person who I sublet with did it perfectly.
Yeah.
Shout out to Nicole. But here's my advice if you're subletting. Number one, sign a sublet, like a roommate agreement.
Yes.
Because living situations can fluctuate very quickly, very rapidly, can go very badly.
For sure.
And if you don't have a name on the lease, you have no rights.
For sure.
As a tenant. So sign a roommate agreement.
What do you mean by roommate agreement? Just
so
they know.
Yeah. So it's basically a contract that you make with the person that you're subletting with. Talk about things like rent, like the amount of rent that you're going to pay this person. Talk about what happens if you don't pay rent. Is there a grace period? Talk about breakdown of utilities. Talk about chores or cleaning schedule. What are the expectations there? Talk about how long you plan to stay. A lot of places you can choose to do a month to month. So you just basically are there indefinitely and just have to give them a notice if you're choosing to go, if you book a job or whatever. Things like that. I'm sure you can find resources online too to look at sublease agreements or sublet agreements, roommate agreements. Like do your due diligence and have something signed because it just like you up in the air and sort of like, can I stay in this room for X amount of time? You're not doing yourself any favors. So that would be my first big piece of advice.
Yeah.
But I also agree. I think subletting was a really great choice for me.
Oh, yeah.
Because it seemed temporary enough. I think it's really good for a lot of performers. But you are right in that it's quite a lot to have your name on a lease. There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a good starting point for a lot of people to do sublet.
Or like even when you're just like starting to look for places too, like couch hopping, honestly, like call up your friends, go from couch to couch every couple of days while you are actively touring apartments and doing all this stuff. Like it's a nice little quote unquote like pre-move, like before you really bring all of the stuff. Also, when you are moving here, don't feel like you have to bring all your stuff. I would say try and sell a lot of your stuff and order it to your apartment. Yeah. Because moving into an apartment is just very tricky. Yeah, it's very tricky.
Oh, yeah.
I will never do a move here without movers. You know, it's too much. It's like, it's a lot.
I have never used movers before. Part of the reason is because when I first moved, I was in a completely furnished place, so I didn't need any furniture. And then after I lived in that sublease, I did, I got a bed, I had a desk, I had a dresser, and I did like the U-Haul. My poor brother, I made him drive the U-Haul when he was out here visiting me and help me move. And I've been pretty lucky in that I've had people or like my roommates' parents who live nearby had their car and they helped me. But I do kind of agree. Movers is the way to go.
Especially in Manhattan, just because like traffic-wise is very stressful. Finding a place to park, especially with a U-Haul, is very tricky. So I always, in my brain, I'm like, listen, these movers in New York know this city.
They are pros.
They know how to do it. They know how to block traffic appropriately, how to do all of this stuff. Like, this is their territory. And I'm like, okay, you know what you're doing. I don't.
Yeah.
This would stress me out.
And at the risk of like, listen, no ads for free. Of course.
Yeah.
I would really recommend Piece of Cake.
Yes, I've heard nothing but great things.
They're really good, and I have a promo code if you need.
Yes, amazing. Amazing.
So I guess that's not technically.
Yeah. I think Danny used Piece of Cake when he just did
Piece
his
of Cake is very good.
Yeah.
But of course, like, do your due diligence, look at the Google reviews.
Of course.
Most, I would say, I don't know, if you're new and you're moving, it's a lot. But I would recommend Piece of Cake or any other movers that are insured.
Totally.
So that if they mess up your furniture or they mess up your building and you don't want to get like, stuck with anything. So make sure that they have good insurance. But that's it. Yeah.
And yeah, folks, the less you have to bring here, the better. Just general rule of thumb.
Yeah.
It will always be more helpful for yourself and everyone involved.
Yeah, I agree.
So you got some other options other than just signing a lease, and there are Facebook groups for sublets and all of this stuff.
Yeah, so I actually found my sublet situation through a Facebook group called Gypsy Housing, which I've recommended to a lot of people. It is nearly all artists, actors, artistic people that are either offering rooms to let or are in search of. And it was just a community that I could trust a little bit better. And I had known other people that had found good positions through that.
Yeah.
That being said, same thing as if you're doing, if you're like searching for an apartment for yourself to rent and be on a lease, due diligence is such a huge thing with
100%.
sublet. Like, make sure that you got to do the vibe check with all the people.
Always.
If this is something that's important to you, I would ask about things like, how do you handle cleaning the common spaces and like just make sure that it's a compatible place for you.
100%.
But yeah, I just like due diligence is such an important thing, and you never be afraid to ask questions. And if something seems like unfair, don't just be like, yeah, but like I'll deal with it because it's in the perfect location that I want, or I'll deal with it because it's a really good price for a sublet. Like,
no,
don't.
Don't.
Yeah.
Especially when you are technically in their space, it is so easy to feel powerless in that regard. So like, you got to stand up for yourself in those regards.
Yeah, absolutely. And sublet or actually renting, either way, there's always another option. There's always another apartment out there. There's always another option.
Listen,
do not feel like if I don't rent this, I will never find a place. The turnover, it's another huge thing about New York that was news to me. The turnover rate is insanely quick. I have people now looking for like mid-August or even September, and we turn them away.
Yeah.
And that's in what, like 8 weeks?
For sure.
Yeah. So it's so quick. I've met people before who have come to view an apartment, and I ask, when are you looking to move? And they're like, end of this week. It's so insane. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that.
Yeah.
But just know that if you're looking for a place and you're like, you have an icky feeling about a deal and you don't want to sign a sublet, or you don't want to rent this apartment, like, just know you can take a breath, and tomorrow there will be, multiple new listings on Street Easy for you to look at, or multiple more posts in Gypsy Housing, or whatever it might be.
And like, that being said too, if you are starting to look, you need to be prepared to sign day of. I feel like.
Yes.
If you see, because the thing is, if you see a place you love, you probably love it for a reason. And a lot of people probably also love it. Yeah. So the minute you set foot in there and it's a viable option, you got to take it. You just got to do it.
Yeah. Subletting is maybe a little different, but.
Oh, for sure.
Dear listeners, if I could impart one piece of wisdom to you from this entire conversation, literally, you can like turn it off after this. No, please don't.
No.
We're entertaining. But
yeah.
Have your paperwork ready.
Oh, yeah.
Have it ready. I'm going to rattle this off of what you need. It might be different for sublet, but have all of this. Are you ready? Okay. Letter of employment. Last couple pay stubs. last couple bank statements, your last year's taxes, a screenshot of your credit score, and a screenshot or like scan of your ID.
And also, quite frankly, if a lot of you are like just coming out of college or anything.
If you're a student,
Yeah.
they need proof that you're a student. So something like a transcript or a class schedule or a student ID, get this stuff scanned, get it on your, oh my gosh. I'm using my hands. I'm very passionate. Get it on your phone, get it ready. I call this locked and loaded. It is the best way to give yourself the best chance to secure the apartment you want, hands down.
I mean, also, too, the younger you are, the less work history you have and the less savings you have, it's very realistic that you are going to need a guarantor.
Yes.
So make sure you have that lined up. I mean, I feel like a lot of you, it will be your parents and whatnot. So make sure they know that they are going to have to be involved in this. They also need to have all of those documents at the ready. The thing is, like, it's just a level of security that the landlords and stuff need because, I mean, these places are expensive.
Yeah. And from the landlord perspective, nearly all laws in New York City are on the side of the tenant.
Oh, yeah.
They are all in place to protect us, which is good news for us, obviously. But from the landlord perspective, it is incredibly difficult for them to evict people from their apartments. And so you renting their apartment, you are an investment with them and you are a liability. And so they want to make sure that they're making a good investment in choosing you to be in their apartment. So like that's definitely something that I took some time for me to learn because I think there is a negative connotation with brokers, especially and agents and landlords in New York City in general, which I have some mixed feelings about, to be honest. But it's a business transaction and they're trying to make sure that they have the most solid, the best thing you can do for them is make it an easy choice.
Yes.
And that, yes, exactly what Brennan said is if you need a guarantor, make sure that a personal guarantor is the way to go.
Yes.
There are also third-party guarantors that you can use, but I wouldn't recommend it unless you have to because they'll charge you an interest and it gets like kind of astronomically ridiculous. But it is an option for you if you're not someone who has a personal guarantor.
Yes, for sure. And like on the subject of that all, like let's get into the financial aspect of it because moving to New York is an expensive feat.
Yeah.
You need to have money at the ready.
Yeah.
And you need to save up. You do. I would say, I mean, on average, I would say you will probably be spending $1,000 on rent. Ish.
I think that's low.
Oh, okay.
If you're subletting.
Heard. Okay, then let's
if
go
you're
even higher.
subletting, I would say just be prepared that when you sign whatever agreement you're signing, sublet or actual rental, be prepared to pay the first month's rent, a security deposit, which is equal to 1 month's rent.
Potentially last month's rent too. No?
No. All that's legal for them to ask of you is first month in security.
Okay. I
if
definitely paid first and last.
Did you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But then that month came around at the end and they were like, you don't have to pay rent this month. And we were like,
that's very nice. That's very nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, first month security deposit. And then if that building is represented by an agent or if you are represented by an agent like me, broker fee.
A broker fee.
So oftentimes.
Which is typically what? Equal to a month's rent?
I would say on average, you're looking at 1 month's rent. In the summertime when things are more competitive, it's the most competitive season in New York City. It's when most of the leases end. So apartments are emptying.
Yes.
And therefore, there's a lot more apartments available to rent.
Of course.
You're looking at 15%.
Okay.
So 15% of the annual rent, just for for all you doing math out there, 1 month's rent is equal to about 8.3% of the annual rent.
Okay.
So broker fee is essentially almost 2 times rent.
Okay.
So all this to say, if you are ready to sign a lease in New York City, you need to be prepared to essentially pay 4 times the rent
yes.
up front.
And also just like blanket statement, I feel like you should also have enough money for you to be able to survive 2 months without a job.
Yeah.
That's not saying that you won't find a job quick. That is just like, as you get acclimated, that is just kind of what you need.
It's definitely responsible.
Oh,
That is
totally.
definitely the responsible thing to do. Part of it is like, there's a fine line because of course you want to be financially stable, but you also don't want, I don't know, like if you have enough gusto and you have enough confidence in yourself, you can get a job at a restaurant
Oh, totally.
very quickly, but you might not get a paycheck for like 2 weeks.
Exactly.
But I hesitate to scare people because I think had I not had the situation that I had and having a soft place to land when I moved here, the finances of it all, I think would have become a crutch for me to not move here.
100%.
So I don't want to discourage people. Like I promise that this is why they say, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere.
Yes.
If you trust in yourself and you are like prepared to pay that money up front and have a place to live, a place to, crash at the end of the night, you can trust yourself that things will fall into place.
Yeah.
But it's also a balance of having realistic expectations about what you need.
Totally. I feel like I know so many people that are like, yeah, I'm going to move to New York. I'm just saving up right now, but it's been like 3 or 4 years. Folks, at some point, you just got to pull the trigger.
Yes.
And it's always going to be scary. It's
so
always
scary.
going to be daunting. But once you are here, it makes up for it immediately. I promise. I really promise, I feel like when I was looking at colleges way back when, I always found like the big ones very daunting because I come from such a small place. But something that I was always told was you can make a big college feel small, but you can't make a small college feel big.
Yeah.
This city is the same thing where it is huge, but you find your community, you find your life, and it feels so much more contained and attainable. Like, you will find the comfort here. But yeah, it's good to save up. It's very good to save up prior to coming. Honestly, for like complete comfort and safety, if we're looking at a number, I would say $10,000 would be wise.
So crazy to me.
Which sounds like so much money. But like,
it's not.
But when you are living rent free, if you are able to save that up within a year, that's the time to do it. That's the time to be taking extra shifts. That's the time to be working jobs that you get tips or commission or whatnot, because that is going to be such a lovely safety net for when you get here,
Yeah, I guess I have a bit of a disadvantage because I didn't necessarily have to do that math.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I think if you're going to sublet and you can find a place to rent for like $700 to $1,000, maybe not that much if you don't have to pay a broker fee.
Totally.
That's like a huge thing. So I don't know. I think you definitely need upwards of $5,000-6,000.
Yeah. I think the safety net kind of thing would be $8,000 to $10,000.
But my dad likes to joke that like you literally wake up in this city and New York City's like, that's $5, please.
No, truly.
Like it's if you walk out your front door, you're spending money. You are. It's just kind of like the lifestyle, to be honest. So like you can be smart. You can cook your own food. It takes a little bit more willpower, to be honest.
Well, we'll go over budgeting and stuff in like the Surviving New York episode.
Yeah.
But like in terms of the move, you should have a pocket full of cash.
Yes.
You need to.
Yeah, 1,000%. Yeah. Or thoundopy, as I say. I've been down 1,000%. So I don't know. My friend Holland, my friend Holland has coined the term hundopy or like hunnopy.
Hundo, of course.
Or like hunnopy is definitely something I said. And then recently I've coined the term thoundopy, which sounds a little dirty, but it's really satisfying.
It just sounds vague,
Thoundopy.
Thoundopy.
Yeah, but once
what
you know,
you just call me? Excuse me?
This is a family-friendly podcast.
Not really, but yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right.
Yeah. And like, especially when you're an actor, like you are going to be struggling financially. Like it's just going to happen. So like the more comfort you can have at the beginning to like get your bearings, get your surroundings, like
take a breath.
That is going to just that acclimation period of 1 to 2 months is going to be so important and vital. So like really set yourself for as much success as you can. Also, this is all subjective, like some people need to relocate fast, and like that's totally understandable.
Yeah.
Do what you got to do and figure out what you got to figure out. But like in terms of like just making the move to like start your life fresh is like, I would say that's the safe zone. And and then you're moving here and you're like, wow, I'm an actor in New York City. Where should I be? Where should I be? Like, so places you're going to need to be are going to be our audition centers, which are typically like between 34th and 38th Street on 8th Avenue. They are in that Chelsea-ish area. You have some in the Times Square area that you will need to be. But luckily, I would say the Times Square subway stop is going to be the most convenient for a lot of people.
I mean, it's the major hub.
Yes.
Yeah.
So just these letters and numbers are probably going to mean nothing to you at this moment in time. But when looking for places, you can catch the NQR line there. You can catch the ACE line there. You can get the 7. Is that correct?
7.
The 7.
7 goes to Times Square. 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
And maybe the Orange, BD?
The Orange goes to
BDF?
Bryant Park, which is still walkable to these places. So there are a lot of convenient subway stops to get to these places that an actor needs to be. However, on the other end of that, you also have to know where you'll be getting onto said train.
Yeah.
And I think for the sake of convenience and lifestyle, 10 minutes is the absolute maximum you should live away from a subway station.
The price will lower dramatically more than 10 minutes walk from a subway.
100%.
Which, good to know.
For sure.
If you're willing to like add that 15-minute walk commute to your day when it's snowing.
Yes.
Or when it's a day like this and
Exactly.
it's 95 degrees outside.
Yeah.
It might be worth paying $200, $300 less in rent.
Yeah.
But I would agree, get as close as you can to that subway.
And
get as close as you can afford.
Once you are in the hustle and bustle of New York, like you're going to be wanting to get places fast. Like you're just going to want that. You're not going to want to walk 25 minutes to the subway to get to this other place that you need to then walk more or whatever. Like it is just time saver, yes. Also, like in a reverse way, it is a money saver because you will then have more time to be at work and do all of these things and not be exhausted and have other jobs and all of that stuff. Like just in terms of ease of life, yes, it will be more expensive, but it will just pay off in a million ways.
Yeah, I agree.
For sure.
I agree. If you can afford it, get as close as you can.
Totally. So you need that. I mean, you should have a laundry situation, of course. You should have a grocery situation.
This is a big one.
Yes.
So the number one question I get asked as an agent in every single open house that I ever do, and I do like 1 to 4, 5 open houses every day for 2 years now. Where's the laundry? Number one question. And something that I wish everyone would know is that most of the buildings, especially in Manhattan, are pre-war. They were built over 100 years ago, and they don't have laundry systems. They don't have laundry services. It's rare to find it in Manhattan.
Yep.
But the good news is the community knows that, and the community will meet the need of the community.
There's going to be a laundromat on every block.
Laundromats, wash and fold is something that I had never heard of when I moved here.
That's what I have to do.
Yeah, so wash and fold is where you take your little laundry bag and you bring it down and you drop off your dirty clothes to an establishment that will clean them, dry them, and fold them, usually overnight.
Yeah.
Sometimes same day.
I usually do it same day. I'll drop it off in the morning,
and then you
pick
go
it up.
back and pick it up.
Yeah.
That's wash and fold. That's, I think, the most common for people. The other option is pickup and delivery, which is what I do when I'm feeling really splurgy.
Yes.
Which is they'll come to your door. They'll walk up your stairs. You hand your dirty laundry to someone at your doorstep. They take it away, wash it, dry it, fold it, and they deliver it back to you. Obviously, that's the most expensive route.
My laundromat does it for free.
Oh,
they do free pickup and delivery. I don't do that, though. It's so close that I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to bring it there. Like, I need to have some form of manual labor involved in this process, And
then, of course, there's always the option of doing it yourself.
Yes.
Laundromat. I asked for quarters for Christmas last year, and my dad really pulled through. So I haven't been paying to do my own laundry. Save up your quarters, people.
Yeah.
So quarters, but they all have quarter machines, so you can put cash in. You bring your own detergent. It really depends on where you are.
Oh, yeah.
Where I am, I'm comfortable leaving my clothes to wash. And like going back home for, 20 minutes or going to the grocery store or whatever. Yeah. That's not the case everywhere. No. Most people, I think in Manhattan, will stay in the laundromat, bring a book, listen to a podcast, maybe, per se.
Oh my God.
Maybe that's
what could they listen to?
Yeah, we'll have to think
Normal
of something
gossip.
to recommend. We do love that.
Literally.
Podcast. House of R.
Oh my God.
Hi.
You're welcome on this anytime, literally anytime, please.
So that's, I think those are your laundry options, but to move to New York with a limited budget and expect there to be laundry is it's a pipe dream.
Yeah. And if you don't have laundry in building, this I'm going to say is even less amount of time than the subway. I would say you don't want to live more than 5 minutes away from a laundromat.
Yes.
Because you're going to be carrying a big old bag of laundry.
Yeah.
Also, pro tip, just buy a lot of underwear before you come. That's what I do.
This is the real advice that people need.
I bought like 20 pairs of underwear.
Yeah, that's the thing is like when I do my own laundry, it's not a weekly activity. I do my laundry every 2, sometimes push it.
Yeah.
Sometimes push it. Yeah,
20
that
days,
is
maybe.
Yeah.
Every 20 days, actually, literally, because I have 20 pairs of underwear.
Mark it in your calendar. There you
go. Oh my God.
Yeah, that is pretty good advice. But yeah, I feel like not a lot of people outside of New York recognize that.
Oh, no.
You cannot expect laundry.
Yeah.
And if there is laundry in the building or in the unit, those apartments rent one showing. People will kill.
Dishwasher, same exact thing.
Dishwasher, yeah, you can't really expect it.
Be prepared to hand wash your dishes.
Let me tell you, I have never lived without a dishwasher until I did my sublet. There was no dishwasher, and you can live without it.
Oh my God, that is
It kind of sucks, but only it sucks much less than you think it's going to.
Yes. And when you see the number of a difference of what the cost would be, it's fine. It's so fine.
I was told to tell clients, and I didn't know this either, but I was told to tell clients that when there is laundry in building, it normally adds at least $300 to $400 to the price of your rent.
Yeah.
Which you wouldn't be spending that much even getting it picked up and delivered every couple weeks.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. So that's like a good perspective thing.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you got to get to your audition places. You got to get to your groceries, which you got to figure out what's most affordable. I do take a train to my groceries sometimes.
So do I. I would do anything for Trader Joe's.
Trader Joe's is the thing.
We're hitting it up after this. We'll see you there.
Yeah, that's going to be the cheapest grocery option for sure. And then, your laundry. I would say those are the 3 must-haves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything else will be here in New York.
Yes.
There are restaurants everywhere. There are bars everywhere. There are banks everywhere.
Yeah.
There all of the other life stuff is in abundance in these places, but those are the 3 necessities as an actor when you are coming to the city.
I think that's great.
Yeah. And then you get here and there's so many people that want to take advantage of you when you're moving here.
Oh my God, yes.
It's Scam City.
I have been on both ends of this spectrum.
Oh, yeah.
I have been as
the
a person
scammer.
No. Oh, that didn't sound good, did it? I just mean that I've learned so much from this job, and like as someone looking for an apartment and then someone on the other side renting people apartments, if you don't know what to look out for,
yes.
Here's the thing. Nearly everyone, every brokerage company, every landlord, we're all using digital staging because it's cheaper, and we have AI now. It's taking over the world.
Yeah.
That we're using to stage our apartments. Of course, we want to show the space to the best of its advantage, but that's why the in-person vibe check is so important because we use wide-angle we use all the tricks of the trade. We use wide-angle lenses. We use photo editing to make apartments seem lighter and brighter. And like if you put work into an apartment, you can make it look really good.
Yeah.
I've seen people do so much with so little space.
Totally.
Just being clever and creative and like having good taste. But generally speaking, like, do your due diligence on brokerage companies, on agents, and just like generally speaking, if a deal sounds too good to be true, it is.
Yeah.
If someone is asking you for anything up front besides maybe an application fee, we charge a $20 application fee at where I work.
Which is so fun. Or I had to do like a credit check fee.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that
because
kind of
that's
thing.
exactly what it costs us
Once
to
again,
run your credit.
$20. Yeah.
Some brokerages ask for a higher application fee. Just ask really what's refundable and what's not.
Mhm.
But generally speaking, like if people are asking you for money or, you know, like too much before you get into an apartment, no.
Yeah.
No. You do not sign anything
Nope.
until you have seen an apartment in person.
Of course.
Do not sign anything. Yeah. And then just beyond that, not saying that most landlords are scammers.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that. But what I will say is that nearly everything in a lease is negotiable.
Totally.
If that tile in the bathroom is disgusting, you can negotiate that to be cleaned before you move in. If the
Your
broker
apartment should
fee,
always be cleaned before
yes,
you.
it is standard.
Cleaned and
standard,
repainted.
cleaned and a fresh coat of paint. Yes, unless the people before you have painted it a
Yeah.
beautiful color and you request to leave
Of
it.
course.
Yes, clean and paint.
Granted, they will probably be doing a 2-in-1 and painting over the dirt. It's a
yeah.
clean and paint in one.
I mean,
spell
sometimes,
swoop.
yeah. What they on TikTok they call it the landlord special, where
That's
they just
exactly
paint
right.
over the light, like the
Yeah.
light socket, and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
everything. Yeah,
Of course.
yeah, definitely seen it. But yeah, just know that unless it's really competitive and there's applications right behind you, things like broker fees are negotiable. Sometimes even rent is negotiable, dependent on what the landlord approves of. So just don't feel like you have to say yes if it's too much of a sacrifice. I think it's always worth an ask.
Yeah.
What's negotiable? I can't do this broker fee. You, especially if you listen to my advice and you're locked and loaded with your paperwork and you tell someone, hey, I have all my paperwork ready to go, but I don't want to pay this broker fee. I don't think that many people moving to New York recognize that they have the leverage as the client. So use that to your advantage, I would say. And more broadly speaking, in due diligence, check the water pressure in the shower.
Yes.
Check that the toilet flushes, check that the windows close. I don't see nearly enough people doing that in the showings that I have.
Also make sure the windows open. I do have a friend that moved into an apartment where the windows didn't open for safety reasons or whatever, which was terrible.
Yeah.
But also, like, in terms of the pest situation, if you see a lot of steel wool shoved into little crevices, that is to keep out mice.
Yeah.
So if there's an abundance of that, be wary
Red
of
flag.
that.
Yeah.
If you see expanding foam in gaps and corners of closets and stuff, that is to keep out mice.
Yeah.
Be wary of how much there is
Yes.
of that. Always look for, droppings everywhere. Like, always look in every closet and whatnot. If you're feeling very bold, pull out the stove, look behind the stove, because that is the stove and a dishwasher, if you have one, are very common places to find mice entering your home. You gotta look out for those kinds of things.
Yeah. 311 is such a great resource. If you are already living in a space and you are coming across these problems, your super is always your first line of defense.
Always.
But if that's not working, if they're not answering, if they're too busy, if it's
I
not
gotta text
happening
my
fast
super.
enough, do it.
He's not answering, which is the problem.
Oh no.
I gotta get on his butt. Continue.
But pending the super, then the landlord is your next line of contact. But if things aren't happening or the problem's getting worse, 311 is a service you can call to report any activity. Your rights as a tenant will always be protected.
Yeah.
So, 311. 311, call 311.
311, what's your emergency? Just kidding. They won't get back to you that fast.
Unfortunately, I feel like people don't learn this. They only learn this the hard way. So let us impart this wisdom on you now, in that legally, as a tenant, you are so protected. You're so protected by the law. So just know that if you have a just cause that your apartment is uninhabitable, number one, you don't owe rent.
Of course.
You do not have to pay rent. You can still live there and you do not pay rent.
Squatters' rights.
That's
a different story.
It's a definitely a different story. And I actually had never, in my time here, had never come across a squatter until about like 2 months ago.
Crazy.
I'll tell you about it later. But yeah, so yeah, look at a lot of places, have your paperwork ready, do your due diligence when you're looking inside an apartment, and then know that you have a lot of rights.
Yeah.
So don't get scammed.
No, don't get scammed, folks.
Yeah. And it's also, listen, I promise you, I know that brokers have a bad connotation, but this is the number one reason to use a broker. It's because we have this knowledge and we can represent you. And I think me especially, just like as my heart as a person, and also because I come from a performer background and I thrive on making connections with people, I will not lie to a client.
Yeah.
I will never lie. If this apartment isn't for you, my commission at stake or not, it's not worth it to me.
No.
That is not always the case with brokers, but it certainly is for me, and I think for most people in my company.
For sure.
Which citywide apartments, by the way, if you want to look it up, or if you're moving, let me know.
Also,
let
folks,
Brennan know.
Like, message us, DM us if you are looking at a place and you're like, this feels icky.
Oh yeah.
What's the tea?
Yeah.
Like, shoot us a message.
I love that. And also, just so you know, it's actually very helpful. It's the idea of that gossip is a weapon.
Oh, yeah.
And if you, like, you should tell me the name of your previous landlord.
Oh, yeah.
And
I will.
I tell people, I can't tell you how many company-wide emails I have sent out or other agents have sent out. They're like, hey, don't work with this broker.
Yep.
Don't work with this landlord. They're scamming people.
You know what? I'm going to give you the name of the broker too, because
do.
we scolded him.
Yeah, good.
Yep.
But I just think that sort of, and once we make that information readily available, it's only going to help people who are moving to be able to Google that and see that, you know?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, folks, there's a lot that you got to be wary of. I mean, that's going to happen anywhere you're moving, you know, and like, especially when like this is kind of the start of your quote unquote adult life. Like, there's a lot that you just don't know, and you're going to learn along the way. And like, honestly, you might end up in a housing situation that's not that great. And then once your lease is over, you're going to move. You're going to move.
Yeah.
You know, nothing is permanent. You're never going to get stuck in an end all be all kind of situation. You know, it's you're going to learn, you're going to wisen up, and then you're going to come on a podcast and talk about it so others don't make all of the mistakes that you did, you know?
No, and it is unfortunate that most people have to learn this the hard way.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's why we're talking about it.
And that's why you got us.
Hopefully, like, if you press play on this podcast, then like you're doing your due diligence already.
100%.
So kudos to you.
Bam. Great work, everybody. I feel like we kind of nailed it.
Did we?
I think so.
That's great.
I think everyone's ready to move to New York.
Yay!
And yeah, folks,
can't wait.
Like, if you need help and questions and stuff, like, reach out to us. Like, we are your biggest supporters.
Yeah.
And you can be our biggest supporters by finding us on Patreon.
Kudos for that transition.
Thank you. It's my tactic every time.
You're getting so good at this.
However, folks, I really am your biggest, like, I am rooting for you always.
Yeah.
This is just a very nice segue. Folks, you can find us on Patreon at, let's see, it's patreon.com/BA2Broadway. Also, just general disclaimer. We don't gatekeep any vital information on there. Like, that is just for fun bonus content. We have audition horror stories, silly industry stories. We also are about to start a new little perk. In general, I should say, this isn't Patreon exclusive, but in 2 days from now, we are going to be launching our first ever mini series From BA to Broadway.
I can't wait.
I will probably release an official trailer prior to that. Why is Siri listening to me right now? Stop.
Maybe Siri wants to move to New York.
Oh my God. Crazy. Yeah, so we got this new miniseries. It's called In the Spotlight. We're going to just be highlighting and talking about shows, little brief episodes to give you just a little bit more knowledge in your tool belt to be equipped to have conversations and all of this stuff. And as a principal tier Patreon member, you get to choose the shows we're going to talk about. Every Patreon principal tier member is going to get to send in a request or suggestion. And we're going to talk about it. Okay. How amazing. So if there's something you want to hear from us in those regards, hop on the Patreon. We'd love to see you there. It's a fun time. There's some really great stories from a lot of the guests that you've heard on here already. So yeah, find us on there. As always, you can also find us on most social media platforms at BA2Broadway. And Pauline, where can folks find you if you want to be found?
Wow, I always want to be found. Well, my Insta and TikTok is at Pauline Parkhurst. Yeah, you can also find my bio on citywide.apartments.com.
There you go.
Yeah, always feel free to reach out with any other questions. Yeah, it's tough. And I think like one last parting wisdom is like whenever you're going to move here, the logistics of it all can be really overwhelming, but it is such a great community to be a part of.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's magic.
Yeah.
It's magic. And especially if you continue to like find people like us in your community who have learned what it's like, you're just like, that's when it feels like home.
For sure.
Is when you find that community.
For sure.
So, I mean, I just love New York.
You already have 2 people in your community right here.
Do.
And hopefully 16 others from the previous episodes.
We would love for you to be a part of our community.
100%.
Yeah.
So, yeah, folks, go out there, conquer this move, feel brave, pull the trigger if you're feeling a little stuck, or just ask me if you need to pull the trigger, because I am trying to get everyone to do it. So, yeah, folks, you got this. You got this. Pauline, thank you so much for being here.
Brennan!
What an absolute blast.
It was an honor.
Yeah, I'm sure this will not be the last time you're going to hear from Miss Pauline over here.
I hope not.
Oh, absolutely not. You'll be back.
I love having conversations like this with you anyway. It's
yeah,
just,
that's true.
We just put a microphone
We're
in
usually
it.
doing this
I
anyways.
know.
There's usually just 2 cocktails in front of us instead of microphones. And yeah, folks, have a great rest of your week. And until next week, bye.
Bye.
From BA to Broadway is created, produced, and edited by Brennan Stefanik, music by Dylan Kaufman, and cover art by Jordan Vongsithi.